what parts of it are good and what parts of it are sort of
Not
terrible.
normal, not normal.
Yeah, not normal.
Not
just
normal.
sort of an exacerbation of whatever psychopathy I have related to devotion to character. But yeah, I guess, I guess I want to start off with, I met this guy, David Higgins. I've worked with a lot of great trainers throughout the years. I've done a lot of different stuff. Don Saladino and Charles Cooperman and a bunch of different guys who I really liked. But then, I went through a phase where I was in a bad way physically. In 2019, we shot season 3, and that was I was big. I was a big guy, and then I had an Achilles tear, so I had some problems with my knees and with my big toe on my right foot, and some hip stuff as well. So I was really messed up, and then I went to go do Black Widow that summer, and the great thing about that character is that he was big and, supposed to be out of shape and busted up, which was great. But I started doing some of the physical stuff, like even just, there was a sequence in a prison where I'm running, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Black Widow, there's a sequence in a prison where I'm running around, and even me just running, like, I was just busted and in
That was
pain.
when we met.
Yes, exactly. So I was in pain a lot from my hip and I just thought I was an old guy. I'm like 40, I was 45 at the time and 44 at the time. And I thought, it was just over. And so they had a guy here on Black Widow to help us out, who was helping out. I mean, you were mainly helping out like a lot of the stunt guys too, right? In terms of PT and keeping people in shape and keeping people together, because there was a lot of like stunt injuries and stuff like that as well.
Well,
right?
we're mitigating against the stunt injury.
Sorry, yeah. But those stunt guys like to injure themselves in general, don't they? They like to
that's true.
throw themselves up
They're
against.
a different breed.
Yeah, they are a completely different breed of psychopath. But yeah, so you had this thing where you're doing PT, but you were also sort of training some of the cast if they wanted to. It was voluntary though. It wasn't.
Yeah,
like
for you guys. Yeah, absolutely. I was just there as a bit of a comfort blanket just in case.
Right.
And then your knee was giving you a bit of grief, and I came down. You're like, oh, my knee's a bit busted, but I can't do anything about that right now. And I'm like, why not? And you're like, well, this is just how it is. This is just how it is now. I'm like, what? How old are you? What? And then we got talking about what you've been doing, how you've gotten where you've gotten to, and what you want to do in season 4, really. But actually, no, it was about because of the flashback scene in Black Widow.
Yeah.
And you're like, I need to lose some weight to film that flashback scene.
Yeah.
And and you said, I want to lose, what was it, 40 pounds?
Yeah, we had, I mean, as much as I could, I think, but like 40 pounds sounds about right. But we shot the whole movie, and then we were going to shoot the flashback at the end, and I thought I could lose weight to the movie. They could pad my suit throughout the movie, and then I could be thinner for when we met him in Ohio.
Yeah.
And so you and I started working on how to do that. And we approached it differently than I'd ever approached it in the past.
So how I generally work is that I try and build from the baseline up. So I'm like, okay, what are your injuries? What are the things you're carrying? Why is that possible? And how we can iron the creases out as we progress. And for you to lose the weight was a goal in mind at the time. But equally in my head, I'm like, okay, I've got to sprinkle in what you need, but also what you want. And that's the kind of nuance as a PT goes, is that I got to give you what you want, but also got to give you what you need so I can get you to where I need you to get to eventually. And so we started on the journey, and a lot of it was just reconnecting how you feel around your body in regards to muscle activation. Where are the imbalances? Why are they there? Through post injuries, how do we correct that? And also just teaching or leveling you up on what your body is capable of actually doing, and not necessarily resigning yourself to the fact of, well, this is me now. I've got mid-40 spread on and I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think that was the thing that there's like several things that we can talk about related to this transformation, related to the whole thing, and one of them is, there's a component that I think is really there's sort of three. There's like health, and then there's like aesthetics, like how you look, and then there's like how you feel. And I think sometimes those are the same, and sometimes they're very different. But I think in terms of what I had to do, I've tried various things in the past, and they've been sort of ineffective or short-lived because of how I felt, I think. And so I think the way we started that was really interesting to me was we started with simple, like, as you say, like activation.
Pilates-based movements, basically.
Yeah.
I brought you way back down to the floor again. I'm like, well, if you can work out, our bodies, our central nervous systems, I don't want to go too far into the weeds, but if we're on the ground, then we're at our safest psychologically. And so we have to activate first, create that sort of safe environment of glute activation, core control, how to breathe, like literally how to breathe. And we'll go into that in a minute with the whole going through COVID. And just feeling what's going on and correcting yourself as you get stronger, correcting yourself through the more and more advanced exercises that we load your body with. So it's postural dysfunction correction first, and then from there we build out.
Yeah, and what it looks like, you use all these fancy terms like postural correction nonsense.
I'm intelligent.
But what it looks I know guys who use fancy terms. I don't know what they're talking about. No, what it looks like is really boring crap. Like a lot of like lying on the floor and like having your knees do this like a clam and stuff. And we did that for like a couple weeks, really, and also with some muscle release, like you'd sort of dig into areas of my body that weren't
foam rolling a lot.
Yeah, we're just getting on a foam roller and rolling back and forth, like simple stuff that I didn't think was, I didn't know what it was doing basically, but it did really add up. And I think, they talk about it like they talk about consistency, and they talk about but it was the simple things that I continue to do that make a difference. Like those little Pilates movements were so vital, and they fixed my knee, and they fixed my toe, my ankle, my hip, and everything, so I could move. And then once I could do that, we could really start, doing more complicated stuff. But we did we did the exercise stuff, but then the other thing you introduced me to, which is, it's kind of the big fad diet of the moment, but it really did work for me, was this intermittent fasting concept. Which is basically, I don't know if, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about this, but it's basically just being hungry. I mean, I think that the funny thing about losing a lot of weight is everybody's trying to figure out these how do I do it? Protein or this, all these very complicated equations. And maybe for guys who are at the high levels of fitnessy regimes in terms of what their bodies can do, maybe that is it. But for me, man, it was just not eating a lot of food and just being sort of hungry.
It was gradual. It was gradual, to be fair.
No, that's true. No, that's true. And when we started, I mean, the intermittent fasting thing is you do a window of time when you eat, and then a larger window when you don't eat. So sometimes people do 10, 14. It's 10 hours of eating and then 14 hours of not eating,
and then you gradually, when you get more comfortable with it, you pull that back into 10 to 8 hours of eating, say 9 to 5 or whatever that is.
Right.
And then you bring it back. So how I usually approach it is, are you a breakfast person or are you a dinner person? And most of the time people are dinner time people, but sometimes people are like, oh no, I can't do without breakfast. So you're fine, whatever is the most important meal of the day to you, within reason, then you start, say you're opening up that window when you start breaking your fast, hence breakfast, right? And then you work within an 8 to 10 hour window of that. And then gradually when you start to go, oh, this is actually not too bad, I can do this, then you start pulling back the window into smaller frames of eating windows, and then they're effectively not eating windows, so your body can digest. and then it can start to really shift a lot of the